It's pretty incredible when you think about it, how sometimes the biggest, most profound theological ideas can be packed into just a couple of words. Today, we're going to deconstruct one of the most famous and most debated phrases in the entire New Testament, Abba, Father.
So how on earth can two simple words define a relationship with God? That's really the heart of the matter, isn't it? This one little phrase has sparked decades of intense scholarly debate, and we're about to dive into exactly why. All right, so let's get the basics out of the way first. What are we even talking about with Abba? Well, it's an Aramaic word, you see it written here. It's what's called the determinative form of the noun ab, which just means father. Sounds simple enough, right? But as we're about to see, its real meaning is anything but. Now here's where it gets really interesting. For a phrase this famous, you'd think it's all over the place in the Bible. But it's not. Abba, Father, appears only 3 times in the entire New Testament. Once in the Gospel of Mark, and twice in Paul's letters to the Romans and the Galatians. That's it. Just 3 times. And that right there is the puzzle. How did a phrase used so rarely become the absolute focal point of this massive theological discussion? It all comes down to what this cry might reveal about Jesus' own self-understanding and his unique relationship with God. Okay, so let's dive into the idea that, for generations, shaped how almost everyone understood this phrase, the incredibly influential daddy theory. And the man behind it was the renowned German scholar Joachim Jeremias. Jeremias' argument was both powerful and, honestly, pretty direct. He basically claimed that this one word, Abba, captures the fullness of Jesus' identity and his relationship with God. For him, this wasn't just a key, it was the key. He called it the ipsum vox, the very voice of Jesus that unlocked everything. So how did he build this incredible case? Well, Jeremiah's argument really stands on 3 core pillars. First, he proposed that Jesus always, and that's the key word, always addressed God as Abba. Second, that doing so was completely unprecedented in the Judaism of his day. And third, and this is the really famous part, he claimed Abba comes from a child's babbling, essentially meaning daddy, which pointed to a kind of intimacy that was totally unique. And look, this theory was huge. It was persuasive, it shaped sermons, commentaries, you name it, for years. But eventually, other scholars, especially linguists like James Barr, started to really dig in and put Jeremias' propositions to the test. Which, of course, led to a crucial question. Is this super popular daddy theory actually correct? Well, as it turns out, when you look closer at the linguistic and historical evidence, the picture gets a whole lot more complex. Let's break down the counter-evidence, starting with that first big claim, that Jesus always used Abba. The problem is, scholars now see that as a massive assumption. We know for a fact that other Aramaic forms for my father existed at the time. So the idea that Abba would have just completely pushed out all the other options, well, it's pretty unlikely from a linguistic standpoint. So what about that second pillar, that calling God Abba was totally unprecedented in Jewish prayer? Again, the evidence is a bit more nuanced. While it definitely wasn't a common way to address God, the idea of God's fatherhood wasn't completely alien. You have figures like Honi the circle drawer, who is described as having this special son-like relationship with God. The concept of an intimate, fatherly relationship wasn't totally absent. And now we get to the big one, the most famous claim of all, that Abba means daddy. This right here is where the theory really starts to fall apart. Linguistic analysis shows that Abba was actually a common, familiar term used by adult children to talk to their fathers. It carried a sense of intimacy for sure, but also respect. It wasn't just toddler talk. And think about it, if the New Testament writers really wanted to say daddy, there was a perfectly good Greek word for that, papas. They didn't use it. And this all brings us to the definitive, almost mic-drop conclusion from scholar James Barr, stated so bluntly back in 1988, Abba isn't daddy. This was a landmark moment, really, that effectively dismantled the most popular and beloved part of Jeremias' whole theory. Okay, so if Abba doesn't mean daddy, does that make it less significant? Does it diminish the meaning? Not at all. In fact, it might just push us toward a deeper and maybe even more profound meaning, what we can call the cry of sonship. This completely reframes the question for us. If it's not just about a simple childlike nickname, then what is it that makes the phrase Abba Father so theologically powerful? Let's trace this through the Gospel of Mark. The whole story builds in stages. First, you have Jesus' baptism. The Holy Spirit comes down, a voice from heaven declares his sonship. Then, much later, in the Garden of Gethsemane, a moment of just absolute agony, Jesus cries out, "Abba, Father." Theologians now argue this isn't just some random prayer. It's an outflow of the Spirit that was given to him at his baptism. The cry doesn't define his identity at that moment. Instead, it powerfully reveals and affirms his unique sonship and his complete submission to his Father's will. And this is where the story expands in this incredibly beautiful way. Because the Apostle Paul takes this intensely personal cry from Jesus and applies it to all believers. He builds a whole theology of adoption around it. So you can see the shift, right? In Mark, it's the personal prayer of the unique Son facing his hour of suffering. But when Paul picks up this phrase in Romans and Galatians, it becomes the corporate cry. It's the cry of adopted sons and daughters, the sound of them realizing their brand new identity as children and heirs of God, all through what Christ did. So for Paul, when believers cry out, "Abba, Father," it's so much more than just their own voice. It's an outcry of the Holy Spirit living inside them. It's what confirms their identity as God's adopted children. It's the Spirit testifying that they are heirs. It is quite literally the sound of freedom from the old ways and the confirmation of a totally new relationship with God. So, in the end, the true power of Abba, Father, isn't found in a childish nickname, but in this profound mystery of adoption. It's the unique cry of the Son, now shared with all who believe. And that leaves us with a pretty profound thought to wrestle with. What does it truly mean for us to pray with both the radical intimacy of Abba and the profound reverence of Father?